I think we're live.
We're live. Hey, welcome.
Welcome.
It's Wednesday, June 25th, and this is ILT Academy Office Hours Live.
Nick, I don't know if you noticed on the ILT Academy, the LinkedIn event, you put an E at the end of office hours, so it's actually ILT Academy open office horse.
Horse.
Here we
Nice.
are.
So here we are. This is great.
How are you?
Good. It's Wednesday. We had all of our big founder showcases.
That's right.
Um, it's hard to believe that those entrepreneurs finished 10 and 20 weeks of ILT Academy. Hopefully everybody is resting for the moment while we are busy onboarding the next wave of founders. Our largest set, we have about 124 that are coming through this current batch. We'll have 5 cohorts running simultaneously.
It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I will be instructing some of the classes. North Dakota cohort, I believe, is like 40 entrepreneurs, which is incredible. It's
Yeah.
awesome that there are this many people that are starting businesses, small businesses, startups that are trying to learn how to be successful. That's what it's all about, Nick.
Yes. Yes.
And
This is awesome.
I guess maybe that's a good segue into what this is. So we are here to answer your startup questions. If you are watching us on LinkedIn or Facebook, I believe we're live on both of those. I can't really tell. Still learning how to do this, even though this is number 6. But feel free to add your questions to the chat. Nick and I will be monitoring the chat, and we will answer probably all of the questions. Most likely, unless they're weird. But
no weird ones. We won't do the weird ones. But
and we may or may not have a special guest joining us later on in this call.
I was like, we should tease that.
Should we say who it is? Or well, I don't think we shouldn't. What if they don't?
Let's wait. Yeah, let's wait. I mean, you have to stay to find out who the special guest is.
Yeah, no spoilers.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing.
Yep. Well, we have it on good authority that they'll be here around 12:30, depending on if they've finished their lunch and the microwave didn't break, and they can come join us. No, I'm just kidding. We have no idea if they're going to be eating anything with us.
That's right. And if you're eating lunch right now, thank you for being here during your lunch hour. And we are not stalling. We do, in fact, have questions ready to go because we are pros at this already. So do you want me? I've got a list of some questions that have come up in office hours in the past in ILT class. Do you want me to just hit you with one of them?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let me see which of these is pretty good here. I mean, maybe we could start with this one. That does seem to come up quite often. I'm going to send it in the ILT LinkedIn event chat, and then we can pull it up on the screen and talk about it. So let's see here. Give me 1 second. Oh, it's not letting me do the chat thing. Oh, wait a minute. Technical difficulties. I think I've got it. Okay. Here's a question from last ILT office hours. I don't actually have the attribution, but question is, when is the right time to go full-time on my business? When is the right time to go full-time on my business? So maybe some context, like for me, and I think a lot of founders, right? Like you start out with a day job and maybe you start messing around with your startup or your other small business on the side. It's a side gig. The dream for many folks is to do that full-time. I guess the question is, how do you know when?
How do you know when? That was a really good question. And something that many people have thought about. I mean, I thought about it with a number of the businesses that I've started. And at the end of the day, the first question is, can this business make more than $0?
Yeah.
You don't have to make more than $0 to start the business. But if you're going to go full time, unless you have enough operational cash flow, so uh, let's call it like your personal operating budget. How much have you put in your reserves that you're willing to spend towards your goal? If you don't have somebody else's money to spend, aka if you raised capital, if you didn't take out a bank loan, which I would strongly advise not to take a bank loan until you know that there's revenue that you're going to generate to pay off that bank loan at some point. um, I would just be asking myself, and anybody that I care for, loved ones, family, spouses, kids, whatever, can you make more than $0? When will you make more than $0? And are you willing to put in the work to get to that spot? Because you will have to invest your own time and money to do this. We just want to make sure that you don't run out of cash.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a very pragmatic way of looking at it, right? Like thinking it through, like how much money do I need? Can I make more than $0? I mean, I went through all of those things when I was launching my first business. Obviously, at the end of the day, starting your own business, leaving the safety net of employer and doing your own thing as like the whole thing is risky. Like startups are inherently risky. So I think the key word that comes to mind for me, and you hit on it, is conviction. Conviction is what you need. So like you need to be able to convince yourself that you can make more than $0. Ideally, you've already made more than $0 before you're full time.
Yeah.
Like I think, maybe that's not always the case, but ideally you've proven some demand from the market that customers are willing to pay you, take out their wallet, take their cash or credit card out of their wallet, literally. And even if it's $1, like you're saying, as long as it's more than 0, like that is a form of conviction that you can prove to yourself, that this is worth spending all my time on and maybe failing.
Yeah. We talk about like what evidence do you have that's giving you this conviction?
Yeah.
If you're, whether it's your, parents or grandparents, if they're like, wow, Ramsey, great job. How do you know that you should go do this?
Yes.
And I want to like get this out to everybody. Like this, you've heard us say it before. There's nothing easy about this. And when I say that there isn't anything hard, what I mean is, it's no harder than any other skill you want to develop. You're going to have levels of proficiency. You're going to get better at it. But at the same time, what this has that I think is unlike many other occupations or vocations is that the buck stops with you. Like if you can't get anybody to buy whatever it is that you want to do, that's an indicator that maybe this isn't a thing. And I would be really careful about how long I can go without generating revenue or cashing in on my savings account or 401k. And you should have conviction, but what evidence have you gathered along the way that's giving you that conviction, right? Don't just leap blindly into the deep end of the pool and hope you can swim. Because I promise you, 9 out of 10 people sink. So why do you think you're going to make it?
That's beautiful. Don't go blindly into the deep end of the pool. Great quote. I would also say don't go gently into that good night.
Yes.
I'll yes and you with that. Take the risk. Like build the thing. Society needs people to build small businesses and startups. Entrepreneurship is what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. But the point of this question, just to summarize, is that yes, you should do that, but don't go blindly into the deep end of the pool.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I love that. Okay, that was great. Oh, wait, how do I go? Let me take that back. Now you can see our names. I'm still working on my MC abilities, but I have another question for us.
Yeah, let's do it.
This is a more tactical question. Maybe this is a nice follow-up to what you just talked about. So this is another kind of milestone-based question. Let me send it in the chat. So let's say you have made the decision to launch your business, to go full time on it, you're making more than $0 ideally, then the question becomes, okay, how do I scale this? Or like, how do I make sure that I've got the funding to do this? This question comes from Michael Copeland Jr., one of our recent ILT Academy graduates. He asks, how do I find investors? And this could be a full day-long conversation, I guess, Nick.
Yeah. Well, I would let me flip it to you for a second, Ramsey. How did you find investors for your business?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess the caveat is, of course, there are different types of investors out there, right? There are angel investors, there's venture capital investors, there's friends and family. I think early on, like, the natural progression for a startup is you're going to plan on raising multiple funding rounds for the most part. If you're a venture backable business, early on, you're probably going to raise a friends and family round, which is just like it sounds, generally going to be your friends and family, those that would be considered to be accredited investors. They meet some minimum requirements, like net worth or whatever, and they believe in you is the number one thing there. Like you could have the best idea in the world. At early stage, the founder is the most important thing. And so you're finding people that are willing to take a bet on you as a person. So generally that's going to be people that are close to you. Right.
Right.
And that's where we saw success early on. We raised a friends and family round. We were lucky to kind of get in contact with some folks in our network that were willing to invest, a few $1,000s, $10,000, $25,000 in our business early on. So that's kind of the first stage. And then, I think maybe the root of this question, the more difficult part is finding accredited like angels and venture capital, because those are professional investors. And that's when things get real, right? So this is something that we've also done. We've raised some venture capital. I guess, there are a few simple tips and tricks that I could share. So, I would start by going to an online directory where venture capital firms are listed. So a classic one is Crunchbase. There's a number of these, PitchBook, AngelList, et cetera, where you can find investors that are writing checks. From there, you can kind of go through and sort and filter by investors that would be a good fit for you. So the stage that they typically invest, the domain relevance they have, the industry that they focus on. You should ultimately be targeting investors who have already invested in your space, who get what you're doing. Like a lot of, I think, early stage founders, Nick, waste time trying to just like spray and pray, pitch everybody.
Right.
And you end up, wasting your time. You end up burning out because you're trying to ask for money from people who are never going to give it to you.
Right.
And so you really need to do the homework before you even are pitching an investor, to create a list. I would say somewhere between 50 and 100 if you're raising a pre-seed or a seed round. Investors that meet your criteria, that would even be interested in talking to you. And then my second piece of advice there would be the best way to get in contact, whether it's raising money or finding customers, is a warm intro. And you can cultivate warm intros. You don't have to know the investor from like college, or they don't have to be a friend of your dentist or whatever for them to respond to an email. But you should do some work to figure out if there's a way for you to get a warm intro from them.
Right.
So one of those ways might be looking at their portfolio companies, reaching out to the founders that they've already invested in, asking them if they'd be willing to make an intro or share more about them. There are some great programs like ILT, like Generator, like Beta that, do some introduction mapping between founders and funders. But I would say, generally speaking, the more work you can do to make that connection warm, as opposed to just sending a cold email and saying, hey, my name is founder XYZ, I would like your money, like that will go a long way. So,
right. No, totally. And Ramsey, you threw out a term some people may or may not know, accredited investor.
Yeah.
I think it's really important that people understand that there are many types of people that can invest in your business, but accredited investors are people that have a high net worth, right? They need to be at a certain dollar amount. And
Legally.
in a court, and this is a legal designation. And it's based off of their income, their net worth, asset size, could be their professional experience. You're going to want to dive into this, but I mean, at a high level, these are people that have invested in things before. Could be startups, could be stocks. They have to have an average yearly income of over 200K. So you can raise money through the friends and family round is part of what you mentioned, but then there's another group here where they're all accredited. And you're going to want to understand these different groups of people when you're thinking about going after investors, which type, and the way that I like to frame it up to yes and what Ramsey was just saying is think of them as investor customers. Investor customers, because your customers, when you think about your target audience, they have different needs and goals that they're trying to accomplish, and they want to use your product or service to help them accomplish that need or goal. Well, investor customers are the same way. They have needs and goals they're trying to accomplish. It usually has to do with them increasing their net worth, growing their portfolio. I mean, maybe they're an impact investor where they want to help specific types of businesses or specific types of business owners. But you have to know that. Okay. You can't just walk into the room. Like, as we jokingly say, not everybody with a mouth wants my peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Well, not everybody that has a bank account wants to give you their money.
Yeah. That's a great point.
You got to break it down and you got to understand it.
So investors as customers, warm introductions, do your homework beforehand, use online resources like Crunchbase or PitchBook or AngelList. I think now AngelList is called something else. Go through ILT Academy, go through an accelerator like Beta or Generator or Techstars or Y Combinator, whatever you can do. All of those things will get you in front of the people that are writing checks. I just sent, and I'm glad you called out the accredited investor term. I just sent a link in the LinkedIn chat. If you're watching on LinkedIn, a link to the SEC website with their definition of an accredited investor in the legal realm. So
right.
This is actually a great segue to our next question. This is also kind of a tactical question. Let me get this one pulled up here. I think the button is just showing up weird on our side, but we persist. The next question, it's kind of fundraising related. This next question came from ILT class a few weeks ago as we were talking about pitching. The question is, how do I create a pitch deck? So let's say we found an investor. We've talked to them. We've got a warm intro. They've responded and said, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing. Let's have a meeting. In that meeting, I guess maybe we could just start there. What does an investor pitch look like? How do you create an investor pitch deck? This is another question that we could talk all day about. But
yeah. And in fact, we are going to have a webinar tomorrow from noon to 1:30 with a friend of ours, Brett Broll from Bread and Butter Ventures. And he is going to break down we're calling it investor insights. What do investors want to know? What are the key metrics that you need to have in your pitch deck to get them really amped up and excited about making an investment? So if you want to, it's going to be a live Q&A session in our virtual space, which is live like this, but it's a lot different because you'll be able to interact a lot with us, which is cool. But to get back to your question, how do I create a pitch deck? I think there's a couple things to be thinking about when putting this together. So at the end of the day, it's anywhere from 6 to 12 slides that explain and demonstrate your business to someone that wants to buy part of it by investing in it. So just remember, this is not a sales pitch. This is not a nonprofit pitch. This is not a 30-second pitch. This is a pitch to explain what is going on with your business. How big is the market? Why is this so important to you? What is your business model? How do you make money? How much money have you made? Like, what traction do you have? And who's on your team? And what's your go-to-market strategy? Like, how are you going to do this? Again, what's your product roadmap? Like, do you have a big vision? Do you have a giant vision? And then if they're so inclined, if they were going to give you money, what would you use their money to do?
Mm.
And remember, they don't want to give you money for you to put in a savings account. They want to know, how are you going to spend it as fast as possible to make them money on their money?
Yes. No, this is a great overview. And I'm wondering, like, one deck that everyone loves to take a look at, one that we look at in classes, the Airbnb pitch deck. Maybe I could pull it up quick and we could just breeze through it really quick.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let me see here. Let me just figure out if I'm able to do that. I think I've got it. Let's see. Are
Excellent.
you guys seeing this?
Yep, looks great.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, maybe you could walk through. So you just kind of described like some of the key points. We could take a look at the Airbnb original OG pitch deck here.
Yeah, I think that they, this was in 2008. Many Bontham spies died getting this pitch deck. And of course, they start with that clean open. I'm imagining, that the founders here, they had this dialed in to 30 seconds or less, where they're explaining who they are and what they do. And of course, they've got a nice, crisp tagline. Again, there's no pictures of them on here. Like, just what I want everybody to see is keep it simple.
Yeah.
Right? Let your talking do the words. This is a lot of people get confused about mailing a deck versus presenting a deck. When you're mailing a deck, you might need to have a little bit more on the page because someone's reading it. But really, when you're presenting, the least amount of words and information on the page as possible, because you're just trying to capture their attention.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, this is actually their fourth slide, but when I present it, I like moving it right away to the beginning, because if we're thinking about the target audience here, this is somebody that has no idea what Air Bed and Breakfast is, what they do, and why do the founders even think that this is possible. And so, they did a great job of saying, hey, listen, there are 660,000 people already doing this couch surfing thing. And in 1 week, there were 50,000 new temporary listings on Craigslist. So just like if you were selling your house, they are trying to help the audience or the investor understand the comps, or that there are people already doing this behavior or habit, which is really a setup for the problem that they're going to talk about in just a moment.
Yeah, I mean, just really quick, like, this is de-risking it for the investor. Like, for the investor, they want to know that other people already want this, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's exactly the picture they're painting before they go here and explain the problem that they're solving.
Yeah. And then when we get in, so now that you know that there's this, people are doing this behavior, the question that the investor probably has is, so what's the problem? And that's where they get to come in, and now you get to show your expertise. But this is where you have to have done the work. You have to know the research. If you go and do active customer discovery, so that you understand the problem, or maybe you're scratching your own itch and you in fact have the problem. But in here, price is an important concern for customers. And then now you need to cite evidence. How do you know that anybody is concerned with the price of booking a trip, which we know it inherently to be true? Hotels leave you disconnected from the city and its culture. How do you know that is true? What evidence do you have? And there's no easy way to exist to book a room with a local or become a host. What evidence do you have that that's true? You will often find that you're presenting the problem to an investor. They've not spent any time really digging deep into this. And so this is your job to really make sure that they understand that you know the market better than they do, and specifically you know the customer better than they do.
Yes. Yeah, you're educating, you're preaching.
Then we get into the solution. What the hell are you doing? Right? Like, remember, in 2008, this was weird, right? Like, Ramsey, hey, I know you don't know me. Could I stay in your bed where you and your wife sleep? Just this weekend, somehow I learned you're not going to be there. Can I use it? Right?
Think about that. Yeah. Just the concept of that. I mean, similar to like Uber as well. Like, hey, I know that you have a car with a back seat that is vacant right now. And I know that if I pay you some dollars, you can get me from point A to point B. Like, can we do it? Like,
yeah.
And now here we are. The world is shaped by these companies and ultimately the pitch deck that they put together early on to get the fundraising they needed to go do the stuff that they've done. So.
Right. Well, and then so again, now what the hell are you doing? Right? A web platform. Okay. What do? People can rent their space and host, and then the value props: save money, make money, share culture. The trick here is not to go too deep on this slide, because we're just trying to help the investor understand what they are supposed to know about this, not how it's going to work. This is a what and what value are you providing? And it's got to be clear. If this slide doesn't make sense, the rest of the presentation, honestly, I don't know if it matters.
Yeah. I mean, this is the money shot right here in the movie business.
Right. And then we go into our product or our product demo. Now that they know what we are and what value we provide, now I want to know, well, how are you actually going to do this? And so this is where they did a great job. And I don't even know if at this point they had made this. These could just be mock-ups. And I guess my point to that is just make some mock-ups. Yeah. We're going to let users search by city, which answers the how question that you just set up and also solves the problem you brought up earlier. We're going to let you see listings and make this really, really easy so you can find the one that's perfect for you. And of course, you can see if you were in tight, like they're saying how much all of these cost. Again, we're answering the question to the problem and the solution. And then look at in 3 screens, look how easy this is to book it. Search, review, book. We just told you there's no easy way to do it. And now we're showing you there is an easy way to do it.
Yes. And, there's a few more slides here. I'll go through them relatively quick because we have a special guest that is about to join us.
Ooh, sweet.
But I mean, these first 5 slides is really where you're presenting the argument that what you're doing is impactful. It's there's this future that's awaiting that will inevitably exist if only someone could go out and build the product or the solution to bring it to reality. And that's exactly what you're painting here in these first few slides. The rest is supporting evidence, right? So how big is the market? Investors want to know that the market's big enough for them to get a return on their investment. They want to know how you make money, right? So Airbnb, in their case, they're taking a fee on however much that booking costs per night. If you extrapolate that out based on their target market, you can get, in this case, they projected $2 billion in revenue by 2011, which I don't think they were far off.
No. Well, and this is a 3-year.
Yeah.
So they made the deck in 2008 and they said by 2011, 2.1 billion. Again, giant market, giant opportunity. Your job is to clarify that to an investor. Investors don't want to make a little money. They want to make a lot of money.
They want to make a lot of money.
As you're building this, if you can't show them how you're going to make a lot of money together, they will not invest in you.
Yeah. And then the last few here, competition, like who else is doing this? This is a pretty typical way to present this, right? Like on this 2-axis grid, like, is it online or offline? How expensive or affordable it is? Airbnb, typically you'll see the startup puts themselves on the right. In this case, I think Airbnb has a valid case for doing that. Right. They then go further to talk about their competitive advantage, first to market. They've got incentives for the host. Generally speaking, they say insanity and momentum are both competitive advantages, Nick. Like being crazy enough to be the first one to do it and having some traction already, like That's a competitive advantage in itself.
Yes.
And then they talk about their go-to-market. How are people going to find them? They talk about doing events or going to some major events where people are going to be booking lodging and advertising there. They talk about partnerships, and they talk about social media like Craigslist, if you can believe it. And then their team, some testimonials from the press and from users, and then their ask. So how much are they looking to raise? A $500,000 angel round, which is crazy to think about. That's what this deck was able to unlock for Airbnb early on, which, as we know, the rest is history.
Yeah.
So there we go. That is a pitch deck.
Yeah, I hope that helped. Yeah, it you can see it's 10, 12 slides. It's your job is just to get from that first meeting to they're like, I like what you're doing. I'd like to learn a lot more. Now, there's a lot more you need to have ready and prepare so that if you get the second date, you're ready to go. Because you only get one chance for a first impression.
That's right. And maybe we can talk about the second date on a later date.
I think on a later date after the break. No, I'm just kidding.
We have a special guest joining us. We have not revealed who this is. I'm just going to add you to the call, and then the world will know. Here we go.
Yay, there she is. Yay.
Hello.
What's up, Claire? Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So for those of you who don't know, first of all, this is a momentous moment for ILT Office Hours. This is our first time having a founder like Claire join us and answer some startup questions. So that's awesome. And for those of you who don't know, Claire is just kind of one of the coolest startup founders north of the Mississippi.
That's true. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, west.
West. I was going to say west.
I guess technically west.
Technically just like a little west. Yeah.
Maybe, Claire, we could just start. You could share a bit about who is Claire Richards.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'm super pumped. I don't think I realized I was the first guest, so the pressure's on.
Number one.
We were also an early participant in ILT programming, so it feels fitting. So I'm based in St. Cloud, Minnesota. I'm a Minnesota founder along with my husband. We started a business called Impacts in 2020. We bring best-in-class e-commerce to K-12. So we make back-to-school shopping super easy for parents and school administrators. And we did not launch the business because of COVID. That's usually the question I get when I tell people we launched in 2020. We launched in January, and then, of course, March came around. But we survived the turmoil, and here we are 5 years later.
I love it. I love it.
We're glad you're here. And we have a couple questions that I think you are kind of uniquely suited to help us answer, Claire, from some startup people that have come through ILT Academy. I guess maybe I can just put one of them in the chat and we can pull it up, and we did not prep Claire for these beforehand, you guys.
Yeah, these are all live. Yeah.
These will be live reactions. We'll see how it goes. No pressure, Claire. But I'm going to pull up one question. This question comes from Sandra. And the question is, how do you get everything done in time? I think, Claire, you're a great person to help answer this, because not only are you running a startup full time, but you are involved in so many other things. So what do you think about this? How do you get everything done in time, maybe for your startup or life in general?
Yeah, man, it's a challenging question, because I think first and foremost, I see life as being made up of seasons, right? And everybody's in a certain season of their life. Some seasons are more flexible than others, right? If you have little kids at home, that looks very different than if you are single. If you are the primary caretaker of maybe your parents, that is a season that looks very different than if you are in sort of your peak career with adult kids. So every season of life comes with different responsibilities. And I like to preface with that, because I think it's really easy to look at what others are doing, especially on like LinkedIn and social media, and maybe even feel frustrated that it looks like they're accomplishing so much. They're everywhere all the time. And you're like, well, why can't I make that happen? Why am I not in that same position? And I think everybody needs to give themselves a little bit of grace, because everybody's at a different season in life, and that is okay. For me, I just happen to be in a season of life that's much more flexible. We don't have young kids at home. I'm not taking care of my parents. We are exclusively focused on our business, right? We both do this full time, and we're really blessed that we have the resources through the business. Like, we're generating enough revenue. We have investors and backers that allow us to focus full time in the business. If you're really early stage, you don't always have that grace. So for me, how I balance, I think I don't always balance very well. I often have a difficult time knowing what to say no to, which probably sounds familiar. Busy people are always in that boat, it seems like. But the reason I have a hard time is not because I'm a people pleaser or feel pressured to say yes all the time, but because so many times in my life, I've said yes to something without totally knowing what the outcome would be, and then received benefits from that opportunity tenfold down the road. Sometimes that is reciprocated in the first couple weeks after I say yes to an opportunity. Sometimes it's like years down the road that the connections I made or the network I built comes back and serves our business and serves me personally. And sometimes it doesn't come back at all, and you have to be okay with that too. From a practical standpoint, I mean, I live by my calendar. I find it very bizarre when people can navigate their life without setting themselves reminders, scheduling out working zones. Like, for me, I have to schedule out blocks of time that I'm going to work on big projects. Otherwise, I forget, it doesn't get done. And I know there are lots of tools like Next Monday, and there's so many different scheduling tools, Asana, whatever. I don't use those scheduling tools typically. I more so function off of my Google Calendar, my Notes app, and emails to self. Maybe not super sophisticated, but it works for me.
I love that. And you covered a lot there, Nick. I want to pass it to you. I would just say I'm impressed with the emails to self. I am now sending SMS, like text messages, to myself mostly.
Yeah.
Google Calendar. And then I'm still old fashioned. I've got like a pen and paper notebook that I carry around everywhere. And I can talk more about it, but I loved what you said about the seasons of life.
Yeah.
There we go.
Bam.
And I love what you said about, taking advantage of different opportunities, saying yes, when to say no. Nick, what are your thoughts on all of this? How do you, I guess maybe to frame it with the original question, how do you get everything done in time? How do you think about getting things done? Productivity?
Oh gosh. I love what Claire was saying. And Claire, I want to raise your yellow Post-it note with the pink.
Oh,
I should get a branded
You
impact
should.
Post-it note though.
yeah, there you go.
So, in thinking about like, how do you get things done? How do you balance your time? What Claire was saying was just perfect. You got to give yourself some grace, because some days you're going to get 3 things done, and then some days you're going to get 1 thing done. But the difference between a wantrepreneur and an entrepreneur is your ability to get stuff that needs to be done off the list. And sometimes you have to let the little fires burn, because they're not going to burn the house down yet. And when you are limited in resources and time, you have to pick the things that are going to burn the house down first. And eventually you're going to need to figure out how to get yourself out of that mode. Some people call it being on the treadmill, and get other people to start doing it. And that can only happen when your business gets to kind of this next spot. So there's a real challenge for early stage emerging founders when they're 1 or 2 people big, but they have to do everything for the business. And Claire, I love what you said. You have to give yourself grace. And as Monica Nassif, the founder of Mrs. Meyer's Clean Day, told me, at Angel Fest, there's no balance. Because I asked her, I'm like, how do you find balance? And she's like, there is none. She kind of like yelled it out, and I was very embarrassed because I was honestly like, maybe she has a
knows.
secret. No, there's no secret.
Maybe
There's
maybe she
not a lot of
outsources
balance.
cleaning.
Say that again, Claire.
Maybe she outsources cleaning.
Oh,
Maybe she outsources cleaning. Yeah.
Clean days.
Yeah.
Did you say?
No, so Claire, you're spot on. Just give yourself some grace. You're not going to get everything done every day. You got to do your best.
I love everything both of you said. I wouldn't really add much. Like, the organizational skills, the saying yes, saying no, like seasons of life. I thought that was awesome, Claire. The one thing I would maybe just say is, like, I think for me, it's about just like staying inspired, like trying to just keep yourself motivated that, like, there's this place that you're trying to get to. I think that for me solves a lot of the prioritization and the productivity piece. Like, if I can convince myself that there's like something core here that we're trying to work towards, I think, to your point, Nick, not only does that help you identify what you should be spending time on and say no to, but it also helps you kind of galvanize like a team of people to help you delegate and spread the wealth of accomplishing things as a team. So,
well,
Ramsey. Sorry. I was just going to say, one thing I will add is you get better at the delineation over time. Like, the more you're making the decisions, the easier it becomes to prioritize. I think about, like, one of the biggest financial mistakes we've made as a business is we had a 2-year out on a warehouse lease that we outgrew. We outgrew the space. We switched to a different model. We moved out of the space. And we had a 2-year out clause of a 5-year lease, which would mean if we basically submitted our notification within 12 months of signing that lease, we would only be obligated to pay for 2 years of that lease. And we didn't make decisions fast enough. And ultimately, we missed that 2-year out deadline by about a month.
Oh.
So, like, now we're still in this cycle of trying to find a subleaser and trying to exit that lease, and it's been a nightmare. And I look back to me at that time and I'm like, why didn't you just make the decision faster? But I think you get better at making decisions faster and prioritizing and making sure you're focusing on the right thing with practice. That's the only thing. Like, I think I'm better at it now than I was when I made that decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. Like many things in life, like, you just have to do a lot of them, and the first few are going to probably be bad. So you might as well get them out of the way, I guess. So that's a good point. And I know we've only got 10 minutes left. Another really great question from Melissa in the chat I wanted to bring up. I think, Claire, you are the most suited person that we've had on ever because it's just been me and Nick. So this is a great question for you. Claire, as a woman founder, do you navigate your funding ambitions differently or strategic to your identity?
Interesting question. I think, okay, so if I'm reading this right, there's a couple things at play here. On one hand, I don't feel like I've been particularly disadvantaged by being a woman when I'm entering these investor conversations. We've raised about $750,000 from both angel and institutional investors. When I have those conversations, I'm not necessarily aware of being treated differently than, for example, my co-founder, Brandon. But at the same time, we know the data tells a very different story. If I am remembering this correctly, I believe it was less than 2% of institutional funding went to female founders last year. And those numbers have not gotten better over time. In fact, they have gotten worse. So clearly there is something at play here on a much broader scale. I think one of the tricky things is, and this is not a hard and fast rule, but women are often inspired to start businesses that solve problems that they face, right? So one of my good friends is developing a really innovative breast pump for breastfeeding or breast pumping
Yeah.
called Mommy is, and it's an amazing company.
Yeah.
And when somebody like Ashley goes to an all-male institutional investor panel and tries to explain why this matters, some of the reactions I know she's gotten is like, what's the big deal? You're breastfeeding for like a couple of months. And she's like,
Yeah.
in much the same way, like we solve back to school shopping. So I definitely had those moments talking to male investors. And by the way, I've talked to, I've pitched our business to well over 150 investors, both angel and VC. A fraction, maybe like less than 5 of them have been female investors. So there's a problem there. There's a challenge there.
Yeah.
But what happens is I will tell them, we make back to school shopping really easy. And they're like, okay. And I'm like, so clearly you have never done the back to school shopping in your household. And it's probably your spouse. Maybe you should go ask your spouse how the experience has been. So obviously there are lots of challenges there. But I think if you have a strong concept and if you're honing in on your pitch deck, if you're honing in on the numbers, if you're developing a pitch that investors want to hear and honing it into what they want to hear, I think you'll have success. We're not going to solve, I guess, sexism, but I think there are ways to navigate this.
Yeah.
Do you think you'd ever start a fund, Claire?
I don't know.
Maybe a question for a different day.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd start a fund. I think I'd be more apt to be an angel investor and like personally invest versus going through the process of starting a fund, because the caveat to this is, so myself and a couple other female founders started a group based out of the Twin Cities, but servicing all of Minnesota and beyond, called Empower Her. And it's just a grassroots organization, not a membership thing, but we try to host events every other month, bringing together female founders in the high growth startup space. Now, all of that said, I don't believe in exclusively investing in one group. Like, I think you invest in ideas, you invest in innovation, and I don't think you should be investing in a specific group for the sake of investing in that group. I think that, by the way, is well serviced by the nonprofit world. I think nonprofits maybe have more of an incentive to focus in that way. But when you're talking about institutional investors, they are looking for good ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Claire, as you have gone out and you've pitched a lot of people, one of the things that we talk about, and I'm sure you recall from class as well, is treating your investors like customers. We need to understand what are they interested in investing in, and aligning not only you and your business. It's not just you're the one with the asset. They're the one with a resource, but you don't have to take your resources. And there are people that have resources that you would never want to take money from because there's no value alignment. What's the advice that you would give to other founders that are looking to raise capital and to help them realize that they're the ones actually with the advantage here, but there's some discernment that's going to be required?
Yeah, you just have to walk that line carefully, because if you walk in with the attitude of like, I have all the cards because I've got the product, that's not a very attractive proposition to anyone. Like if a brand was trying to sell me a product and had that attitude, I'd be like, I'm going to go find a different brand. So I think like walking into these relationships with some confidence, but still being humble and treating it as a partnership is really important. And so when we were seeking investment, obviously our goal was to find strategic investors, people who could help move the needle beyond just giving us the dollars. Our lead investor of our 2023 seed round, called Traction Capital, Minnesota-based venture capital firm, they are run, or they are led by people who have started businesses. So that's really important. They follow Attraction EOS as an operating methodology for how to manage your business and accountability. And that really resonated with us. And they had a long-term commitment to us to help us build this business, not just like, here are the dollars, report back in a couple of years. You're kind of getting, maybe you're not getting married to these people, but like they're becoming like your siblings or your cousins, or like much closer to you than you assume. And so you have to make sure you kind of like these people and you trust them and that it feels good. If you walk into a pitch experience and they give you like an icky feeling, do it. No amount of money is worth that.
Yeah, I
Well
think
said.
I agree with all of that, Claire. I appreciate the nuanced opinion. I think one thing I'm learning, like I feel like early on, I felt like it was all analytical, like where does this fit in with our 5-year plan? Is this a strategic investor? But I do think, and maybe this gets back to the decision-making thing, getting better at it over time, like using your instincts, trusting your gut, it goes a long way. And when you're making these types of decisions, especially when you're talking about I would say getting married to an investor that's going to be on your cap table for the life of your business. So
they're an LP, and they may or may not have a lot of decision making power, but if they own part of your business, they can cause havoc, or they can be great partners.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, we're out of time. Unfortunately,
that's crazy.
I had one more really good question, like a very juicy question.
Ooh.
That we just don't have time to answer. Maybe, I don't know, Claire, maybe someday we'll have you back on.
Yeah, it's like we have to do like after hours, Ramsey.
That was like a lead-in.
Yeah.
Dangling there of the carrot.
We're learning how to do this whole social media marketing thing, if you can't tell.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, thanks for joining. Any words of wisdom before you depart, aside from the awesome words of wisdom you just gave us?
I love what you guys are doing. I love this series. I love ILT. I think it is harder than ever for especially founders in the upper Midwest region to do what we're doing, to start something new. To build something from nothing has got to be one of the hardest things. I mean, in every sense of the word. And so people who are willing to go above and beyond to service founders who are inspired to build these businesses but may not have the tools, it's a calling. I know it's a lot of work. I know both of you personally, and I'm just so appreciative of what you do. And I love this entire setup. So thank you.
Boom.
Awesome. Well, we've got lots of opportunities to give more voices to more people. We got to find the starters. And Claire, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right. See you, everybody.